Hi, good morning, everyone. Morning. Welcome back to the Women's Financial Inclusion Workshop. Today we're at day 3, and today we have a presentation which will be led by Mr. Neil. So we'll just give like a 5 minutes before his presentation, and we ask if you could please scan the code and just indicate that you're here in the sign-in sheet. And we also have coffee and tea at the back before we begin. Okay, so if everyone's ready, we'll begin. So last week in day one, we had introduced women's financial inclusion. We looked at the framework and we are introduced to this broad concept. Day two, we had Ms. Tarianani presenting on the demand side constraints, and we had the panel discussion with the entrepreneurs and the education persons here. And now today we'll delve in a bit into the supply side constraints. And today we have Mr. Neil who will be doing that presentation for us. Mr. Neil.
Ms. Vicky, thank you so very much. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Ms. Natalie, good morning. I see you look over here just now, you see me, but you never really see me and Miss Margaret Con just because you're here. I recognize some faces in here, some people I don't, but I'm certain that by the end of the day, I would have, been a little bit more intimate with the names and everything. So pardon me if I don't recognize you or don't yet know you, and you should cringe a little if I do, because I will call on you to participate. So thank you for that. As Ms. Vicky said, Ms. Vicky said, my name is Marlon Neal. I am a strategic and business consultant with PPF Capital. I also have my own consultancy. Up until recently, I was the CEO of Belize Natural Energy Limited, Belize's only oil and gas company. Prior to that, I worked with Ms. Natalie at the DFC as the Chief Risk Officer for just under a year, I believe. And prior to that, I was in public administration with the Belfast City Council. And as well, I have experience in commercial banking and at the Central Bank of Belize in terms of regulation. So, I've moved around quite a bit, and I'm here now, and I'm happy to be presenting to you today. Good morning, Mia. Hi.
There are seats at the front.
And in addition to the consultancy, I'm also the director of the Hospitality and Tourism Management Program at Galen. So I have my hands quite full. As I was looking around the room this morning, I see we're joined by two gentlemen, which is exceptional. And I think, as consultants, we're always trying to sell our services going forward. So I think that for the next sessions that we do have, it would be good for us to have, for example, CEO Torres. I believe you're from BPL, is that so? Ms. Blake, yes, from BPL. It would be good as well to have Chairman Anderson at some sensitivity session. I'm not saying that perhaps he hasn't attended, but it would be good. Dr. Gilly Canton as well from National Gas Company. I see Erin is with us today. So, so that apart from just this audience, that the men as well are introduced to the literature and to the information that we're sharing today, which I think is invaluable. Like I said, who else I could take? Oh, CEO Kendrick Williams as well from your ministry. He was. Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I'm presenting today on supply side constraints. We'll get into the definitions shortly. We'll not take it for granted that we are all talking the same language. Go ahead, Ms. Vicky. Now, this is a statement from Bridget Brennan from her book, Why She Buys, the New Strategy for Reaching the World's Most Powerful Consumers in 2011. The paper of record, the Wall Street Journal, has called the book seminal literature in terms of marketing. So, they have Regis who wants to be a millionaire. I will use one of my lifelines and ask anyone to finish that statement. I think it's a leading question. You might know where it leads, but the statement is, if the consumer economy had a sex, it would be? Yes, absolutely. I heard female. Why?
Because female are loyal.
Okay, hold on, Mia.
Female are loyal customers.
Females are loyal customers. I'm loyal too. I only drink a certain type of beer and a certain type of whiskey. I don't know why that's all I could think about just now for that example, but I am loyal too. Good answer. Who else?
I said female. I believe we are the backbone of the family. We're a very resilient gender. We're not easily broken.
Miss Blake, thank you very much. Okay, good. That's good. Well, anyone else before? Well, you're absolutely right. It's female, but we do have some stats. We're not just saying this to say it because we're in a women's inclusion strategy workshop. We do have the stats to back it up, and I'll share that very shortly on the next slide. And I'll tell you something very personal, just from where I sit. It's absolutely true that if the consumer economy had a sex, it would be female. At least in my situation, it is, because here's why. When I was preparing for today, and I was leaving the house, my wife said, do you have this? Do you have that? And you need this. Almost everything that I am wearing right now was probably purchased by her. Of course, influenced by me in terms of the style, but I will not do shopping online. Logistics are difficult for me. So we're a good pair. She helps me in the consultancy, she helps with logistics, she does all of those things, coordination. I will do the number crunching. It's just the way we work as a team. But my bracelet, my watch, I buy my own socks. My shoes, my jeans were her decisions. And guess who my parents call when they need something? They're not tech savvy. She's the one that does it. So in addition to taking care of the house, I guess taking care of the kids, she also commands the economy of our two houses. My mom will say, pay the credit card for me, do this, do that, send me a WhatsApp, and I'll be like, you know all the logins and things like that. That thing drives me crazy. But she does, and she decides where to buy and I guess how much to spend. At least in the case of my parents, right? So it is true. Next slide, please. So I want us to consider this, and I want us to look at it in a local context, right? The stats that we have on the left are from the US, and what we have on the right is Belize. And I just want to draw a parallel. I thought that we would have had more bankers here today. I see we have Ms. Goff. I believe you are from Atlantic Bank. I've seen you before. Ms. Raymond, Lara, those ladies. Mr. Mejia needs to be here. So consider this, and again, this is from the US, according to Ms. Brennan, why she buys, women control or influence 90%, and this is from the US, of household financial decisions. 85% of consumer spending, and 27% of the world's wealth. What does this mean for us in the local context? This is Belize's banking system, the loan portfolio in Belize. On the vertical axis, we have in millions of dollars in stock position what the loan portfolio was as of 2016, December 2016, and what it is as of December 2020. Now, we don't have to be good in math to realize that it's an upward slope, so there's an increase that's good for Belize and the economy, but what is it saying? It's saying that in 2016, the loan portfolios in Belize banking system was at $2 billion. Over the 5-year period, it increased from $2 billion to just a shade under $2.25 billion, or a $285 million increase. Now, just in terms of the market share, if it is that women account for 90% of household financial decisions in the US, I can't draw an exact parallel and say that's what it is in Belize. Nor can I say that 90% of that 285 million were influenced by women, because some of it is consumer loans, some are business loans, some are development loans, infrastructure loans. But if we had the data and we could parse and slice through the data, we can determine exactly how much influence this demographic has. And that is a wealth of information for our marketing, for the way we position our wallets. Well, I know Ms. Goff and the DFC has particular loan products just for that segment, and we'll hear about that a little bit later on in the panel discussion. But if women are so influential, then the question is, to what extent is our marketing and the way that we present our products and services geared towards that segment? That's the first question. The second is, in terms of our delivery channels, how well are those delivery channels geared towards catching that demographic? For example, and we mentioned this in the first day, in terms of the opening hours of our branches. Monday to Friday, I think in Latin America and in Caribbean, Belize opening hours were pretty good on aggregate, but we could do better in terms of a Saturday. That perhaps would be the time when the women entrepreneurs who have been taking care of the household and perhaps other responsibilities within their sphere would have time to do banking. Perhaps that's an assumption. I don't know, but it's something to consider. And I say I don't know only because I don't have the data. I can only imagine that it as a possibility. So we're missing something. Next slide. If the business world had a sex, it would be male. The same author that just said if the consumer world had a sex, it would be female, is now telling us that if the business world had a sex, it would be male. How do we reconcile the two? What is happening?
I think males are more naturally entrepreneurs. They have this business mentality. They're not afraid to start up a business, versus a female who might be a little bit more hesitant, thinking about the investment cost, thinking about, will this be a viable product? So that would be my guess with that one.
Or maybe the males are being given more opportunities to establish businesses rather than
Opportunities, I'm hearing access, I'm hearing risk appetite, I am hearing Mr. Hope Amar. Yes. What am I hearing?
I think it will, men take more risk. So when you talk about business, we're talking about risk taking. So men is all about taking risk. While women, when it comes to the consuming part, women spend more money. So we're looking at people who take more risk as the business aspect, and people who spend more money as the consuming aspect. So that's what I'm looking at it too.
I'm sorry I'm not passing on the mic. I'm not a very good force.
I would just say women take measured risk.
Measure the risk.
And
Calculated risk.
our integrity and things like that are important to us. And we ensure that if we take on a loan, like for example in my presentation here at DFC, women are the best paid clients. So for us, it's not, while the social aspect of what we're doing is important, for DFC, women is a business case.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Goff. Thank you, everyone. We are reconciled all of those different observations and I guess thoughts right now. Thank you for the participation. Now, as far as women, I think my wife takes more calculated risks than I do, to be quite sincere. I don't like spend money. I'll be honest. But if there's something around the house that needs to be done, she won't hesitate. Oh, we need to do the ceiling. As far as I'm concerned, the ceiling is up. Why would I pay $1,500 to just stand and, but it needs to, it's something about it. And that's a very basic example. so it's on my mind, so I said it. But I think generally, yes, she takes more calculated risks. I might have the big ideas, but she parses it through and says, this is how we can get it done. Again, a team. Now, objectives. I started out like that just to get us a little bit warm before we get into the objectives and the actual structure of today's presentation. I think you see the theme, how exactly it will be. I want to hear from you. I want to understand where you're coming from and for us to reconcile what we present here. First objective, explain how social norms lead to supply-side constraints, and we'll get into the definition of supply-side constraint. We have two sides. We have the demand side, which is the consumers, that is the bottom-up. And then we have supply side, which is the financial institutions, the ones actually providing the product or service. So that's fairly easy to understand. Social norms, we're talking about, concretized, I would say concretized, but they can change, social beliefs about women or about men, about women entrepreneurs, and so on and so forth. Just let me check my notes so that I don't miss anything. The second objective of today's workshop is for us to develop a working knowledge and for us to look at solutions that have been implemented to address some of these constraints. We address this as well further on in day 4. I will be doing that presentation as well. And we get a little bit more granular with the information in terms of the project management aspect of it, how we go about implementing change, how do we interpret the data, what is good data, what is lacking. So we're just scratching the surface today, and I can't steal my thunder from tomorrow by going too far into it, but we do look at 2 cases of solutions that have been implemented, not in Belize, but I think it is still applicable to where we are. So the social norms are enduring beliefs shared by society. That's one. We'll look at the 2 cases. And then number 3, we'll understand the importance of market research and data for solution design. Data. I know that has been something that has been discussed in day 1, day 2. I saw the presentation for days 1 and 2. We have some very good information from a diagnostic study that PPF has done. We will have some very good information from the Central Bank of Belize tomorrow in terms of their national diagnostic study for financial inclusion, not women in financial inclusion, but financial inclusion in general. And as a subset of that, there's gender. However, data is lacking, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on. Now, let's give ourselves some context. Standardized definitions in our case, and when we're talking about financial inclusion, helps with comparison over time and between countries. In other words, we would not like for Belize to describe financial inclusion one way and then another country. We need to be comparing apples to apples. Nor would we like for one organization to have one metric one year and then the next year the definition or the metadata behind that metric changes. Or in other words, the way that we calculate that information changes. It has to be standardized, and I think we can appreciate that. Now on the demand side, as I mentioned, this part is very important. It provides information on the way in which the product or service is used. And that sounds basic. However, we take it for granted on the supply side, whether we're delivering a service to the city, whether it's gas, or the National Gas Company, whether it's the DigiWallet, it's a PSU, it's a service that we provide in terms of regulation or banking services. We take it for granted that people use these products and services as we intend. Oftentimes we find that the data indicates that the use is very, very different than what we, perhaps in our offices or in our towers, think it is. can be a difference. Supply side data, this is gathered, as I said, from the top, the service providers. This is very important. This is based on completed transactions only. So on the supply side, almost doesn't count in this case. It is only when the transaction is actually consummated. It's initiated, there's a follow through, and there's an end. In the case of the demand side data, if it is that someone tried to access a product or service and they were unable to, that is where you would find the information in terms of a lack of access. Not on the supply side. It will be from the bottom. And that's why these two data sets are complementary. Because we might look at our loan portfolio and we might look at a successful campaign or the DigiWallet, but we're only looking at half of the picture. The other half is perhaps at the bottom as to why people aren't accessing it. So we might take an internal approach to say, well, maybe the pricing was wrong, maybe the platform is wrong, maybe it's an ease of use case, but we really need to look at the demand side because they are the failed transactions that happen on the demand side that give us a lot more information that we would not have from just completed transactions. So they're complementary. The challenge, of course, as researchers is to bridge those two. It's not very easy to bridge the two and to get a complete picture. That is a challenge. Now, just in terms of the structure of the presentation, you see I have these things numbered 1 to 5. We'll go through each one of them. Supply side constraints, again, in terms of the financial service providers, in terms of any provider of a product or service, these are some of the constraints to financial inclusion for women. The first are the perceptions towards women entrepreneurs. We heard a couple in terms of risk taking, we heard calculated risk, we heard some other suggestions. We look at what the literature is saying in terms of what the research is saying, which is important. Lack of sex disaggregated data. I opine on this quite a bit, as does Chris, as people who consume large amounts of data. Sometimes in our environment it's just not there for the decision making, so we have to kind of, and I'm certain that I see business development personnel in here as well, people that run and manage the cities. You need information to make a proper decision, and when it's just not there, it's frustrating, it's difficult to justify certain actions, it's hard to monitor and evaluate your success. So a lack of data in general, but particularly sex disaggregated data, is a constraint for women in financial inclusion. Also the enabling environment. We look at the structure of the environment. When I talk about enabling environment, you know, in phase 1 and 2, we spoke about the laws and regulations, we spoke about the policies and things of that sort. That is what we're talking about, the enabling structure. Low levels of financial literacy in general. In phase 1 and 2, again, we would have seen, for example, a survey that PPF did in terms of the knowledge of certain financial products. How familiar are men and women with overdrafts, demand loans, and other type of financial products. And what we usually find is that as far as the survey indicates that men are much more, well not much, but more versed, generally more versed with these products than the women we surveyed. And limited provision of payment services. The wallets, to a large extent, are addressing this issue. However, access and utilization is not as high as we would like it to be, so we'll look at that. And then when we go through these 5 supply side constraints, then we look at the 2 cases, and then we look at data, very short, 1 or 2 slides, it's not too long, and then we'll have the final thoughts and impressions. Feel free to interrupt anytime. It's a conversation. It's not me being preachy. I say that everything up there you agree with. If you don't, let's have a talk about it. And if you're not talking, and then I'll ensure that you do. How do we stand with time? Just because I,
Yes, we have to finish, 10,
10,
20.
20, okay, good, thank you. Next one, please. Number 1. Remember I said the first supply side constraint, so you'll see the slides numbered 1, that's when we start with that topic, then then 2, then so until it reaches 5. So number 1, I chose this little puppet because when it comes to the social norms, it's usually learned behavior, is something that we observe in our society and we take it to be true. It may or may not be true that puppet might have a life of its own and not necessarily be controlled by the string, but it's an ideology that we need to cut through so that the puppet is free. So in other words, we're not subscribing to these norms. What are some of these norms? The 4 social norms with the strongest influence on women's behavior as consumers of financial services were identified as, and this is from Turkey, culturally obviously very different than Belize. I did not have that information for Belize. Some of it may be directly relatable, some of it is not, but it gives us an idea of the dimensions of some of these social norms that might be inhibiting women in being financially included in Belize. The first one is women should not have financial privacy from their husbands. The second, I heard some and some chuckles. Hi, Chris. Second one is women should not have savings of their own. No comment, okay? Women should not have assets in their own name. Women should not own large businesses. And just remember, these are very specific. I imagine with the research, these are the most common threads. But there are innumerable subsets of these types of mindsets as far as in our society, for example, in terms of where women should sit when it comes to financial matters. Again, this might not be directly applicable. Different society, it's from Turkey, but it's the best that I had for this presentation and this slide. Before I go on, any thoughts on that?
I think most of those.
Hold on.
I do believe that most of those would have been accurate for Belize in the past, but I could see how that have been changing over the years. So I don't think it's very accurate for today, but I could see that it probably was previously.
Thank you. And you have to also, and Ms. Margaret and I were talking about this on the way up, hold the mirror up to yourself as well in terms of how your thoughts and your actions actually contribute to some of these social norms. Because I don't hear these things only from men in, I guess, in jest. Sometimes you hear it from women. For example, you're going through the airport and you look at customs and you have your bags and you don't want to pay all of that duty and you just want to get through quick. Go to the man. The woman want harass you. I mean, in our little thoughts and actions and what we do and what we fail to do, we sometimes encourage these things and we perpetuate it. Yeah, it's a very simple example, but if my son, who is 9, hears that, that's it. It's reinforced. He's in that level where that becomes concretized. And then it carries on. Perhaps it doesn't manifest like that, but some point it will. So that's all I'm saying. Room full of women, some men, hold the mirror up to yourself as well and ask yourself, how, if at all, am I perpetuating some of those own stereotypes? And this is from Turkey again. 1 second.
Sorry, it's just an observation coming back to the question that you asked earlier. Why would the author write, if the consumerism world communities where all had sex will be male. It comes back to social norms. You know, women are perceived to be caregivers, household takers, domestic workers, so they have to take off the home, they have to consume more, and the lack of businesses that they're supposed to own and that perspective, obviously they're put on the consumerism side. But if men are given that freedom to, you know, go gallivant, do your business, do your empire, bring home the money, then they have to create the businesses, and our social norms is the reason why we think that way.
Thank you. I don't disagree at all. Gender social norms, and I put those little buttons there because we need to fast forward from those social norms. So now, as service providers, market facilitators, and I think the first bullet is the most important. I'll ask my notes. Is the most important. Here's why. Well, first of all, it says funders and market facilitators need to acknowledge gender norms. Why would I say, well, I'm saying it doesn't have to be. Why would I say that is the most important? Hold on.
Well, I was just thinking that when it comes to accessing credit, if you don't acknowledge these things, then women will continue to take a back burner when it comes to becoming entrepreneurs. So I wanted I was thinking about just the way how women are treated in certain parts of this country where they aren't allowed to speak, like especially the southern parts of the country, even though they're the ones who are running these households. When it comes to any decisions as it pertains to business or any sort of activities that you would want to get into, you have to speak with the man and as opposed to the woman, even though they're the ones who are running these households. So if you don't take those gender norms into consideration, then we will never accomplish equity and equality. So that's just my thought.
Thank you. Quite a bit to unpack there. Very important though, when I was reading literature, you know, while it is seen that men are often the primary decision makers and those are the ones that will be the front and say, we're going to do this or this is how it goes down. As you mentioned, the influence of the women, and as we saw on the second or third slide, 90% of the financial decisions are actually by the women. You would find that sometimes the men, well, most times the men do consult, and then that is the united front, so to speak.
I agree with what the lady said a while ago. I think awareness is key, creating awareness about what is out there. I don't know how many of you, I think we've all heard of the stone engineers from the Maya community down south. And that is what we consider outside of the norm. A woman, a Maya woman, leaving her home, going to India for 6 months. I think the first one did have children. So it does happen, and if we create, as you say, the enabling environment, if the awareness is there, if the opportunities are there, I think, so you have to consider it. I'm agreeing with you. One of the things we looked at when we designed our Empower Business program for women is access to real estate collateral. And so whereby in a normal loan you would use $20,000, we increased that to $40,000 or $75,000 with a combination of various maybe guarantees and real estate and things like that. So you have to design the product or do the marketing around what is there already.
Thank you, Ms. Natalie Goff, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more about what went into the design, the implementation, and the uptake of those financial products directly geared geared towards women from you in the panel discussion. I truly do. So absolutely. So the acknowledgement, I think, is very important, because if you don't realize that you have a problem, then of course, how can you move on to try to address it, right? I think it was Einstein that said, identifying the problem, you have 90% of the solution, right? Next, please. These are some key insights from a research on financial institutions done by Inter-American Development Bank and Global Banking Alliance. The piece is called The Paradox of Gender-Neutral Banking. So what they did is they set up some model banks, they did financial inclusion training, they gathered data, they observed. It was a research project in collaborative conjunction with these entities to kind of gather intelligence and some insights, and this is what they found. Women have a unique relationship with time. Women have a unique relationship with time. They're very time sensitive because of their sphere of responsibilities. Women are avid consumers of information and advice. Again, while it might seem that men are the primary decision maker, and yes, I'm kind of generalizing, and I'm using my situation to kind of cast a very wide net. That might not always be the case, but the research from the US is saying that 90% of financial decisions and 85% of consumer decisions are driven by women. So I think I'm safe in making that generalization, at least here, and given my example, right? We mentioned this, Ms. Natalie mentioned this, she was right on the mark. Women are calculated risk takers, striving for a balance between risk and reward. And the research found something very interesting. While men are looking for the market pulses, and we are interested in rewards as well, the women are more interested in non-monetary rewards. In other words, impact. So men are running around now in finance talking about impact investing and the change that you can make. That is where women were all along. Not just about the financial return, but about the social return. So we've relabeled that, and now we call it impact investing. Well, this one is obvious. Women do not like pink marketing. That is the same as like greenwashing something, you know, that's the new trend. You just slap on the green label on a new financial product, and it's supposed to be sustainable and not much thought into it. Well, obviously women do not like pink marketing. Obviously it's patronizing. It doesn't really take it. You're not really addressing what the issue is. You're doing something that's a fad. So no one likes that. Women want to connect not only with their banks, but also to peers, potential customers and suppliers, and the wider community. That is where the relationship comes into play, whether it's relationship banking, whether it's relationship with an app, relationship with the city, relationship with a service provider. That's what they're looking for. And that makes a lot of sense. My case again, when I want the full butane tanks, and it's a Sunday, I drive Long Forest Drive, and whichever one open first, that is where I'm stopping. My wife have the butane man number in iPhone, call her, and he come. I operate different. That one open, I have no preference. But she knows that he can trust her, that he want to deliver, and he'll be there. A simple example, but I'm certain that you guys have similar experiences as well in terms of how you see men operate. Next slide, please. All right. This is the last slide before we go into point number 2. Addressing gender norms to increase financial inclusion. This is a project life cycle. I am certain we have seen this before, and we'll see it again tomorrow when we talk about implementation. First, we start on the upper right quadrant, conduct the diagnosis, analyze why financial markets are not working for women. Data, data, data. Create create a vision. I know it sounds touchy-feely, but we do need to have a vision of what we want the system to look like at the end, at the ultimate. So it's important to craft that vision, and again, we'll drill down to this on days 4 and 5. Design and implement interventions. A lot of your work will be the diagnosis, creating a vision, design and implementation. Some work as well, but you should have already had the foundation and the groundwork from those first 2 stages, and then it's just a matter of implementing. Assess, change, and adapt. Monitoring and evaluation are part of any project life cycle. Monitor and measure results to prove and adapt interventions to improve the impact. Very stylized example. I make it seem very simple. Getting into it, you know, it can have its own complexities, but from the 30,000-foot view, that is what we would like to see in terms of the life cycle to address gender norms, to increase financial inclusion. Next slide, please. Why do we not have the sex disaggregated data? Well, awareness, ignorance. It was certainly new to me that women command and control so much of the economy, so much of the consumer behavior, are so influential. I knew it on an intellectual level. I think not until I actually went through the information, you actually get to appreciate it when you make it relatable to you, which is why I said at the beginning of this seminar today, it would be good to have CEO Torres, Director Anderson, Mr. Mejia, well, Henrik Williams was here, Dr. Canton, the Filipo Alarios, the Lyndon Giuseppes of the financial world, to be exposed to this. I'm not saying that they have not had sensitivity training, but it makes a difference being exposed to the information such as this. So awareness is one. Availability, the system design, and I'm talking about actual like computer systems. It might not be set up to actually capture that information. So I might go to the DFC or BPL and say, or the city council and say, tell me how many of your landowners are females. It might be somewhere. Is it accessible? Has it been validated? How easily can you pull it? And when you pull it, what can you do with that information? So that's an issue. Quality, again, in terms of the standardization, one person might categorize ownership one way, someone categorize ownership some other way, and so there might be some issues in terms of quality there. Again, validation. Utilization, you might have the information, but it's underused. No one appreciates why you need to perhaps parse by gender and tailor solutions directly for a particular gender. Leadership, and we'll look at this. And this comes back to the slide where it says that the business world, if it had a sex, would be male, and the consumer world, if it had a sex, would be female. We will look at the composition of leadership in financial institutions in Belize. Next slide, please. Thank you. Enabling environment. So what are we working with here in Belize? As of December, we're looking at, on the right, a snapshot of financial system assets. So in terms of the asset composition, the domestic banks, and these are in millions, Belize dollars, commanded 3.2 financial institutions such as the money lenders, 360 million, and domestic insurance companies, 115 million. So what are we working with? We are working with a bank-dominated lending environment that has very rigid collateral requirements. We've already spoken about the social norms and the fact that, at least in Turkey, it is believed that women should not own property separate and apart from their husband, should not have savings separate apart from their husband. I'm certain some of those social norms can be found within our culture, but if this is the system that you're working with, and these are the products that they're selling, which is, you need collateral, pal. No microfinance options. Ms. Goff mentioned that they have a suite of, I think, amounts women can access for their products. The banks, if you're talking business loan, microfinance, not necessarily, we don't have products like that. I was a banker. I'm looking at my targets. I'm very selfish. I'm looking at my targets and I want to grow my portfolio by a certain amount. So I might not be as deliberate in terms of the microfinance loans, which really drive the economy. Urban focus, the rural areas, those communities that we can't reach are not the focus of the banks. So you can understand, just looking, this says a lot, just looking at the stock position of the assets of these institutions and the way they're structured, and I know because I used to work in them, and Chris knows as well. This is what we're looking at, so it's no wonder then that we have a segment of society that is underserved and perhaps ignored. It's in the structure, it's in the makeup. That's what it is. That is telling you what it is. Any thoughts? Bankers. I hope I did your slide justice, Chris. All right, and enabling environment. We mentioned this just now, inadequate product features for women's, and we look at one of the cases and where they actually spoke about a country that looked at cash flow based lending. So no collateral requirements, and actually what happened there. It's very inspirational. Lack of women in senior management positions, which can lead to a neglect of women as target clients. Higher costs associated with reaching women. High frequency, low volume transactions we mentioned in terms of the microfinance suite of products not readily available through the domestic banks. Demand for more information upfront that oftentimes they might not be able to provide. So that kind of locks you out and inhibits access, right? Next slide, please. Board of Directors composition of banks, insurance companies, and credit unions in Belize. And we say banks, the National Bank is in there, and DFC is in here as well. So, what is the composition? Actually, I had this green one pink, and change it because I don't want to be accused of pink washing, right? So, I catch that last minute, because then I say, oh, you did general. So I put the green. It might look like I advertised for Belize Bank, but I'm not. But what is the data telling us, right? On average, I think the board of directors composition of these institutions in Belize was 6.4 persons. So it ranges between 5 and 6, maybe 5 to 7. But on average was 6.4, of which men were 4.1 and women 2.3. So almost 2 times more men than women. So in the banking world, 70% of the board were men and 30% women. Insurance company, it was exactly the same, and I need to check that number because I don't know why those things are mirroring. If it is, that's a strange coincidence. But credit unions were the only difference, whereby the board composition was more female than males. What would be interesting if we can look at the credit union portfolio and along 6 disaggregated lines to see what the difference is as far as their lending products and as far as their deposit base. And then from there, you could do further analysis if you're into those things and look at the segmentation. Miss Natalie made a very interesting point. Women, on average, are better paying clients than men. So it would be interesting to do a use case to look at the credit unions who have more women on their board, look at the loan profitability of the loan products just for women. And if you can do the same thing for the banks and the insurance companies, you could go to the board of directors and you could say, aha, you're trying to meet targets, you're trying to be profitable, you're trying to turn the corner, you are missing a segment. Maybe you can do what they're doing. It's something that you can consider. And I know in research we can't be drawing it. What I mentioned just now is a lot of hurdles to cross. But we don't have the data, unfortunately, to be able to kind of make those recommendations. We can just point out anecdotally what the situation is. It would be lovely if we had the data, but we don't. On average, males made up 64% of the boards and females 36%. Any impressions there? All right, financial literacy. Financial awareness, and this is something you would have seen from the first day. Financial literacy as well inhibits the access to the financial system for women because, and this is again studied by PPF on financial awareness, we looked at different loan products, different type of financing mechanisms, overdraft, venture capital, angel investing, crowdfunding, microcredit, and just ask a simple binary question, yes or no, how familiar or are you familiar with this product? On average, men are more familiar with these products, the study would indicate are more familiar with these products than women. Maybe men just don't want to admit that, I don't know. I don't think so. I think they were being truthful, and this is what we're seeing. Next slide, please. Again, on financial literacy, confidence in approaching banks. How confident are women relative to men to speak to a banker? What this study is showing is that on average, men are more confident in women in approaching banks. On the left, confidence level of men, 64.6% and 35% not confident. On the right, women, 54, call it 55%, are confident in approaching banks, and women, 45% not very confident. So there's a difference there. And that difference is about what? 10, just under 10 percentage points, multiplied across a population of 400,000, it's significant opportunities for growth, for uptake of products that we're missing. Much needed growth in Belize, that we're not tapping into. It would be lovely if we could actually quantify what that difference is, and we can go to the policymakers, we can go to the Minister of Finance, we can go to Chris Colley, we can go to the PM and say, look, if you focus on this segment, this is what we're looking in terms of contribution to GDP. Data, data, data. Next slide, please. Service provision in terms of access. I've been talking a lot about what is there, what is not there. What are some of the solutions? Non-financial solutions, trainings, seminars, workshops, sensitizations such as these, not just for women, but men too, the men on those boards of directors. So Chris, I think we have a lot more work. Workshops and training, reaching remote and rural areas as well. That's very important. Exposure, networking events, conferences, this one is very important, female agent networks. If you have a situation where women are already not confident approaching a bank, or less so than men, and your frontline staff of lenders, primarily men, perhaps with a certain idea, social norms, mindset. A non-financial solution, female agent networks to expand women's understanding and increase confidence and their ability to approach an institution. Financial solutions, and I like these, collateral-free loans for established businesses. Bundling solutions, now this is a unique one that I found in a jurisdiction. They have a product whereby you could borrow 2 times the amount on program savings accounts, and when you do that, they have partnered with certain supply retailers to offer offer discounts on school supplies. Number 3, support cash flow-based credit assessment tools. In other words, if you don't have a formal credit history with the bank, you can use other records to put together a credit history for these female entrepreneurs if they don't have the information. Comprehensive virtual banking services, I see that we're moving into that direction. The apps are a bit more user-friendly. The ability to make e-payments, we're getting there. Also, a financial solution supporting government efforts to digitize government to persons payments. In other words, social security, tax refunds, other types of benefits from the state. Again, we're talking about very busy individuals who have a large sphere of influence. You have to make it easy for them to. Let me just give you an example. Just in terms of ease of doing business in Belize or what it takes. And this is something that I saw just last week. I was pulling an all-nighter and I think I left the office like about 3:30. I was getting something done. As I was driving home, I live next to the immigration building in Belmopan. And some of you familiar with Belmopan will know where that is. At 3:30 in the morning, lined up in front of the immigration were 3 vehicles from Orange Walk. Many nights, I imagine maybe from Shipyard, one of those communities, were there very early in the morning, 3:30, and they drove to get there to get business done. Why do you have to drive to Belmopan for some of those things? It's very unfortunate. It's costly with the price of fuel right now. The entire family was there. The woman was sleeping in the vehicle with the baby with the glass down, and the men were standing outside at 3:30 in the morning to get business done. That's just one example, but it's things that I've heard over and over again in terms of government services and what it takes to get business done. So if it is that we can support government efforts to digitize government-to-person payments or government-to-person transactions in general, we can enhance financial inclusion and participation in the formal systems by women and the underserved. Next slide, please. I have 5 minutes. Intervention. This was in Colombia. Colombia had a collateral registry. The collateral registry was already operating, but not at the levels that it could have been. So the objective of this program was to increase access to credit for female entrepreneurs. The constraints were 2: banks require physical assets, house or land, and there was a lack of expertise in valuing movable assets. Just for a background, the collateral registry, as it says, is a registry, a place where you log all of the collateral. That is, all the houses are there. So you have the immovable objects, the land, the houses are registered there. It's a formal registry. And then we have the movable ones, the vehicles, the tractors, shuttles and things like that, which, by the way, has value, so you can also borrow against those. So this registry was already in existence, but the uptake and the use of it for several reasons was not optimum. So in this case, the solution was they introduced secure transaction laws so that we could lend to small entrepreneurs who only had movable assets. So in other words, the person maybe with a stall, or the person that has something that is mobile, that doesn't have land, is effectively locked out from the banking system in Belize to a large extent. Why? Because they don't have confidence approaching the institutions, and they would not wait in line to make a deposit, and then they deal on cash basis only for the most part. But they do have capital needs in terms of expansion. In terms of emergencies, people are ill, you need funds for school or expenses that pop up. They also created a handbook and templates to value movable assets. So in other words, they made it very simple for the bankers to affix values on things. Perhaps like a Kelly Blue Book that they have for cars, they did the same things for certain shuttles, certain items, so you have a quick reference guide that the banks can use, and then the regulators can use as well. And I know I'm mentioning the banks, but you also have to understand that the banks in Belize operate within a framework that is guided by the regulators, and the regulators are the ones that impose the requirements as well. The regulators are the ones that said, wait, you're using what? A laptop as collateral? A loss, 100% capital requirements. Is that? Absolutely. So it has to be top to bottom. They changed the laws to lend to small entrepreneurs who only had movable assets. In other words, you're left with a system not just for women, but for people that don't have capital as well. You can never move to that next level. It will always be a subset of the people with assets that continue to acquire and accrue assets. And then there's everyone else. Outcome, it unlocked credit to women-owned businesses who could now use inventory and other movable assets to access capital. Next slide, please. Another intervention, and this is the last one, from Turkey, looking at social norms. Remember, we looked at that same study from Turkey that had the list of 4 or 5 social norms that we spoke about. Well, they did an intervention. This one, I guess, you have to reach the people where they are. This one was an appeal to emotion, so to speak. The objective was to create a positive narrative about women's entrepreneurship. The constraint was the prevailing mindset, perceptions about the role of women. So what did they do? They created a film featuring an ambitious woman speaking of business expansion plans only to be met with cynicism from family, friends, business partners. She persevered and succeeded. Maybe like an indie film, but that was the theme. The outcome, the film was shared on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and challenged women to listen to their hearts instead of what others say, and the film reached an estimated 33 million individuals. Even if the success rate of that is 1%, that's 300,000 persons. If the average household size is 4, that is 1.2 million lives that have been impacted positively by that. I'm certain you can quantify, and I like to talk about quantify because I like to think about money. If you can quantify exactly what the economic impact is, because we're looking for impact, right? And at the end of the day, you do all of those things, you spend people money, you have to be able to say what the impact is, and we'll speak about that tomorrow. Next slide, please. Opportunities. While we do have a large library of information, financial, economic information at the repositories, Central Bank, SIB, we have rich data sets on macroeconomic activity, fiscal activity, monetary aggregates, regulated institutions, real economy. Everything in the economy that you would hope to have is there, but it's not disaggregated by business size. It's not disaggregated, believe it or not, by districts. We know that Belize City is the economic powerhouse, but how much does it contribute to the economy? And that's, for planning purposes, that's necessary. Huh? You're putting up a new branch, you're launching a product, a service, you need to know. We know generally because we're from here, but how? For example, when you're setting targets, if you're setting a target for growth, 15% in Belize City is very different than even a 10 or 8% in San Ignacio. But yet you're holding people to the same standards. If the economic activity in Belize City is twice that of San Ignacio or Corozal, then you're not being fair to your people either. And you're setting unrealistic expectations either for the penetration of a product, uptake of a service, or things of that sort. For example, in the US, each state is treated as a country. People often say if California, for example, was a country, it would be like the 7th or 8th largest country in the world. That is the type of information by district that we would need. This is Belize City's contribution towards GDP. From a planning perspective, it helps. Very limited gender disaggregated data. Again, if the data is there, if we do start ask banks to collect it, there are some system changes that are required so that you can actually use the information. And perhaps if we have the information without the awareness, only the regulator will have a use for it. But within the bank, it will not be used for planning purposes. It would just be to satisfy what the regulator wants. I don't think we have a true appreciation of how this segmentation can drive the economy. We really don't. Access to the data. Not very many people know where to find the data. We do have the metadata below the names, but it's even, I had some, I helped set up this website and I kind of had difficulties finding the data that I wanted because it's just, I'm not familiar with it. You have to put the data in such a way that either it's frequently asked questions or it's keywords. Now there's hashtags. You know, you have to reach the people where they are, how they understand the data. Not everyone understands the way it's presented, and that's all I'm saying. The access isn't always the easiest. But I do see opportunities for policymakers to drive change in terms of gathering this data, and then we have the awareness in terms of including even more so women in the financial system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neal. I think we can give him a round of applause. So right now we have a 20-minute tea break. There are snacks at the back along with coffee, tea, and juice. And then we'll have our panel discussion by Ms. Natalie Wing, Ms. Agatha Ruta, Ms. Vanessa Young, and Ms. Melanie Blake right after the break.
All right. Morning again, everyone, and we'll resume with our panel discussion. Today we have quite a powerful panel of ladies. We have Ms. Natalie Ewing-Goff, General Manager, Development Finance Corporation, Ms. Agatha Ruta, Head of Digital, Corporate and Retail Banking from the Belize Bank. We have Ms. Menade Blake, Acting General Manager of DigiWallet, and we have Ms. Vanessa Young, Head of Finance, Treasury and Payment Systems for National Bank of Belize. So welcome, panelists.
Thank you.
Looking forward to an exciting discussion here this morning. So I'll start with Ms. Goff, just because she is beside me, just by virtue of proximity, and we'll start with asking you to tell us a little bit about your organization and to what extent financial inclusion is considered or prioritized in the organization's strategy.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's an honor for us to be here this morning. Are you hearing me? Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Goff. I'm the General Manager of the DFC. It's an honor to be representing DFC this morning and to be asked to be a part of this panel. As you all may know, DFC, Development Finance Corporation, is Belize's only registered development bank. And as
to help to unbanked and underbanked population to get an access to the financial services. So it's not something that they are in a disadvantage because they need to stand in lines, they need to use, they have no other choice going to the different spaces and different agents to pay their bills. We did for the first time in the country, we used the concept of the simplified onboarding. So there is no need to use so many documents to open a bank account, but we can use the simplified onboarding and have an immediate access to the financial services. Not only to scan the QR code at merchants, right? This is one of the features of the digital wallets, but more importantly, to be able to transact person to person with the significantly reduced cost. Maybe it sounds contradicted, right? Because we have a bank and we have our online banking services and we charge for the deferred transfers, for the instant transfers. So with eCash, we are actually allowing people to pay less for the person-to-person transactions. And this is, I think, a huge accomplishment because it's not only about charging the fees, it's really about including people into the financial services so we can reduce the cash in the circulation. And this is one of the main objectives that we had with our digital wallet implementation. Moreover, I would like to mention the bill payments, as I think this is a big area that can help everybody. With the bank population, that's quite easy, right? Through the online and mobile banking, you can pay all of your bills to the number of pays. However, for the unbanked population, they have no choice. They need to go to the agents and they need to use cash to pay their bills and stand in long lines to do so. So it's really a huge waste of time. With our capabilities through the online banking, mobile banking, and eCash, either banked or unbanked population can pay all of the bills through our services immediately from the comfort of their homes or offices. And they don't need to even think about it that they need to go somewhere and they need to book time to do so. They can do it just immediately from your mobile phone. And taking aside eCash, right? I can speak about eCash for hours, but it's more than that also when it comes to the financial inclusion. What we did recently also with our ATMs network, in the I believe, the problem that in many cases we have an ATM located at the branch for use, right? So customers need to try money. What we did, we go to the client, not necessarily we have right allocated. So and so we are changing the focus and we are bringing our machines to the rural areas of the and deposits to um, but I want to mention one more thing, right? As COVID, post COVID, is entrepreneur online businesses, right? So I see a lot of customers wanting to have an online business, e-commerce, and asking us for the connections to process credit cards, debit cards, and e-cash. I think this is a very good trend so we can really shift from this very cash heavy society to cash light society. Please see that I'm not even using cash less, right? As I think this is a really something very long term, but at least to start to bring more awareness and use the digital channels, and with the local small entrepreneurs being focused like that. I think this is a very good way to change how we bank and how we transact on the consumer side to be able to finalize the transaction online. And this is what we provide to our customers, the API integrations for both for the credit cards, debit cards, and eCash to be able to do so, but also and more importantly to the small businesses. So for them, there is no need to see how I collect this cash. How then I save time and book time in my calendar to go and deposit this cash to the bank. I can do everything to my bank account directly and I don't need to even worry about that, right? And especially with with these young female entrepreneurs that they are trying to establish their new businesses, there is really no need to hire a nanny and pay extra for the babysitter to go and do your banking. Everything is in your online and mobile banking environment. And I find this extremely important, and I'm so proud that we can provide these capabilities to the market.
Melanie?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So, just to give a little background about DigiWallet Limited. So, DigiWallet Limited is a subsidiary of BTL. So, BTL, as we all know it to be, Belize Telecommunications Limited, or Digi. So, just to give a little bit of history, when we had the pandemic, now BTL is one of the largest telecom providers in the country. We take pride in moving forward as a company, but also looking at the different products that we can offer our customers. So during the pandemic, one of the things that we realized was how can we adapt, and we needed to adapt quickly. So that's how we came around about diversifying our products and moving into the digital landscape. What can we offer? Just to go back a little bit, we did implement what is called DigiLearn. It stands for digital learning, where we did a pilot at 9 schools, 1 private school and 8 public schools across the country of Belize, where we had deployed a digital learning platform. So this had enabled these schools to quickly adapt, where they're able to do online learning using the productivity tools that you would use at your workplace, such as Microsoft Word, Teams, PowerPoint. So we take pride in moving forward as it relates to what kind of technology we can utilize and how we can digitize Belize. So bringing it back now to DigiWallet Limited, we did look and we did extensive research to understand the need. Is there a need for a digital wallet in Belize? And based on that statistic, we were able to identify that there is a need. In addition to what has also been explained, we know that there is about 35% of the population that is not banked. And it's also been done through the central bank NFIS, which is their National Financial Inclusion Strategy. 77% of people is not a part of the banking institution because there is no need or they're making minimum wage. So we did very extensive market analysis to determine what is the need, what can we bring, and that's how DigiWallet Limited was birthed. So we are the first telco-led DigiWallet in Belize, so we're very proud of that, moving into the fintech industry, which is very new for BTL because we are a technology provider. Now, we're not a financial institution, so we're not giving out loans, and as such, we're just bringing another payment method. So DigiWallet is similar to eCash, where essentially it's converting your physical wallet into an electronic wallet, where you're able to transact with financial services all from your mobile device. Financial inclusion is very important. You know, there are different benefits in which it can help an economy. You know, in terms of increase the literacy. We know we spoke about some of these things in previous session. For us, what we have done with our app is it's data free. You don't need to have data to access our digital wallet. So that gives users the opportunity, and it expands the access where even if you have a very basic phone, you can also access our digital wallet via our USSD. And USSD is just the ability of using a short code. So again, these are some of the things that we have looked at, and because we are a technology provider, we can bring these kinds of things, and that's what our digital wallet is really all about. In addition to that, we've definitely seen good take-up since we've launched. It's been a little bit over 1 month since we've launched our digital wallet solution, where customers can pay for goods and services, and they can also access their different mobile products. So being a telco provider, we have access to 190,000 mobile subscribers. We connect with these customers on a daily basis. We do get this information and we do analyze it. So we're very excited to be able to move into the fintech world. We do hope that eventually we will be able to have interoperability with the banks. Belize Bank has launched their one. I'm pretty sure the banks are looking at different ways in which they can expand their financial services to customers. But ultimately, I do think that just taking off that competitive hat, it does propel our country and have us be up there with international standards. When you look at different countries like Africa, they've launched a mobile payment service years ago. This is something that has been around for years ago. They've been doing this. We have also supported the government of Belize via our mobile pays, and it was very interesting to know that when COVID came about, there were a lot of people that were displaced, especially in the tourism sector, that were laid off. They don't have any jobs, and the government did receive some funding, but their biggest challenge was how do they remit that funding to these persons? And the persons that were qualified for these funds were persons who are not a part of the banking system. So PTL, we did collaborate with the different key stakeholders through our mobile pays program to be able to remit money to those individuals. So we're very excited. And like I said, we're looking forward to collaborating with the different financial institutions so that we can continue to enhance, because I believe moving post-COVID, it definitely builds the country resilience. Our kids going back to school, it's not that chalkboard teaching anymore. So it's about moving forward together as a country.
Thank you, Ms. Vanessa. Don't worry, you get the next question first.
Okay.
So,
Is it on?
yes.
All right. Good morning, everyone. As Chris introduced earlier, I'm from the National Bank of Belize. We were established in 2013 by the government of Belize with the main purpose of kind of helping towards the financial inclusion dilemma, right? I know we're limited in our physical presence, but we haven't let that limit us to the reach that we can make. So we've been using technology. The MBB Pay digital wallet is one aspect of it, but we've also been opening customer service centers using technology so that we can reach more people out there. Very soon we'll be introducing a new service called MBB Plus. I don't want to get into much details, but that's basically to target the people in the rural areas who don't traditionally have access to banking. So we're heading that. We have been committed to the financial inclusion aspect also, in that we have been able to offer mortgage rates at the lowest across the country initially. When we came in, mortgage rates were about 12-14%. We have been able to drive down mortgage rates, and now we have a number of people who were traditionally would have been left out by the banking system. They are able to own their own homes. Earlier this morning, I was telling Chris, I hope I remember the statistics. When we looked at yesterday, when we pulled out our statistics yesterday, our consumer base is almost 50-50. Men were 48%, female were 52%. And when it comes to home ownership, it was a little bit higher for the female as well. It was 55% to 45% for our consumer base. So we are pushing that financial inclusion agenda. Also, when it comes to the women, we are participating in events like these, to start the conversation, get the conversation going. We haven't been particularly committed to highlighting women on a whole, we've identified and we've accepted our weakness. You know, as a bank, as we mentioned earlier, banks have certain commitments that we need to make. So what we're doing is using, as Ms. Agatha had alluded earlier to, the simplified due diligence. We're using that not only for the deposit accounts, for the digital wallets, but we also want to do that for the loans. How can we make more people access loans with little or no requirement, right? So that's one of our commitments. We'll be doing our marketing campaigns and working along with Beltrade, the Ministry of Human Development, and other organizations who are committed to the same cause as us, because we can't do it ourselves. So partnership is key for us in that.
Excellent, excellent points, Vanessa. So I guess staying on this trend and this question will be for the mobile wallet providers. You know, financial technology can provide a great positive disruption, or it has the potential to provide a great positive disruption and allow us to increase our reach and the depth of interactions that we have with current and new customers. 3 institutions here that launched mobile wallets in the last 12 months, 12 months, right? Thereabouts. What has the market response been so far? Just general indication about users, volumes, and you know what are the profiles of your users, and are you looking at it in terms of gender? And then I guess for the banks, curious the discussion. So, you know, I think we did warn you that I might ask curveball questions, but you know, so mobile wallets initially solve one characteristic of money, that they're a unit of transaction. We use it to pay for goods and services. But have you seen evidence, especially with the target towards financial inclusion, that I haven't had a bank account before, set up a bank account? Are we seeing any evidence that it's being used as a store of value, like equivalent to a savings account? And what are your thoughts going forward with that one?
Okay, we've had several thousand users. We launched in December. We've had several thousand users. The transaction is about 60% of the user base. So we still haven't understood why that 40% are not using it. They have a value in it, they're not using it. Now, whether we need to do our surveys to figure out, okay, do you not know where to use it? Are you using it as a means of savings? That is something that we need to do. And like we said, the data is all about data collection. How can we do it, you know? We're signing an MOU with the University of Belize, right? They have their research unit, so we'll probably be asking them to do that research for us. There are a lot of things that we need to find out. The data is there, as when we were talking in day 2, the data is there, but what can we do with it? You know, we can come up with the numbers, but how do we interpret that, right? So for us, that's about usage of it. Now, to understand why they're not using it, like you said, it may be that they're using it for savings. One of the things for our marketing that we're doing with the small businesses, we're teaming up with Beltrade, and we're doing sessions for first-time entrepreneurs, the ones who are launching their business. And we're explaining to them that to get financing, to get bigger financing eventually, you need to show that you have a history. You need to show, how your business is running. So using that digital wallet is a means of doing so. So perhaps they're using it as that. Hopefully, we can get that data from them soon.
Thank you.
Again, just going back to being the first telco-led, we don't necessarily have that banking statistics to say that, if you're using your money for savings. But what we can definitely say, because we launched just a little bit over a month now, definitely we have seen where it's 58% that is male versus 42% female. But very impressive though is that 77% of our customers are from the bank, express that they do have a bank account. So one of the things that we're looking at is, to create a strategy. How can we get the unbanked and the underbanked to participate? We understand that perhaps they're going to be the slow adopters. They don't understand technology. Maybe they're not aware of it. So they can be some external factors as to why,
the unbanked and the underbanked population who would benefit greatly from a product like this is not necessarily using it. So we do understand the fundamental of data gathering, analyzing this data, and how it can help us to make better decisions at DigiWallet.
I laughed at Chris when you said the slow adopters because he's one of them. Yes.
Yes, I have not downloaded any mobile money app. I have not. I
Let's
just
not go
downloaded
into
an
this
online
discussion,
banking app,
Chris.
and I'm proud of myself for that.
You too? Then we will have an official part of our conversation afterwards. When it comes to your question, right? We launched our eCash at the beginning of August last year. So it's our almost 1-year-old baby. So far, we have 43,000 customers, and we see that around 70 to 75% of them are active. And like I said, it's not only activity based on the scanning the QR codes and the merchants, as we do the person-to-person transactions and also the bill payments. So this is something that it's really driving the customers to use the application, especially when it comes to the unbanked. For us, it's a bit different when Ms. Melanie was mentioning that 77, I believe, percent are with the bank account. What we see as our wallet has the levels for the unbanked, which is the standard wallet level, advanced when we require the ID, and the premium wallet for the customers with the Belize Bank account. 75% of our customer base is the standard wallet users, which shows that this is really like working for the unbanked population. On the other side, more on the supply side, we have over 1,500 businesses who are onboarded to eCash countrywide, with the strategy that we want to make sure that we have at least one business in each village. So the really like the unbanked population, they have an access to cash in and they cash out their wallets and to be able to do their groceries over there as well. So in terms of the statistics, I'm a huge believer in big data and analysis. And we analyze the demographics on a constant basis, and we see, but mostly the demographics when it comes to the industries, whether they are students, as let's remember, eCash is also directed to the young population. As right now, today, we are discussing the female financial inclusion, but I think that the important aspect of it is also the young population in this segment. So we don't leave them for them to wait until they turn 18 and then they can start to learn how the financial services are working, but also from the early age for them to learn how to use it, right? And Chris, you are mentioning the savings. I think this is a very important aspect for people to learn how to manage their finances. And with cash, it's extremely difficult unless you have your notebook and you are really putting your expenses and your income, right? And then you know your budget. Let's be very honest with each other. It's not happening, right? In many cases. So that's why with eCash, we are also pointing out this financial literacy aspect, as all of the transactions that are being done are recorded forever. It's not something that the history is archived or it's disappearing, and you are able, with the filters established in the application, you are able to manage your finances. So you really see how much and where you are spending versus the income you are getting. So you can see, okay, maybe next month I can spend less on certain items, so I can save and do something that I want, right? I think this is a very important aspect of the digital wallet and reducing the cash in circulation again.
So, Ms. Natalie, DFC has a program that's dedicated to female lending, right? From understanding. Tell us a little bit about that program, when did it design, sort of what the uptake has been, and
perhaps what are some of the lessons learned from deployment that perhaps some other financial institutions could understand and possibly roll out something similar in terms of more targeted products?
Okay. When the gender policy was adopted in 2020, one of the things that we had to do under component one, which was gender lens investing, was to develop a specialized loan program. While we mainstream gender within all our loan programs, we felt that we also needed to target, like men may ask, well, why do you have Women's Day? Because you need to empower, you need to do something. So we felt we needed to start with a loan product. That loan product was launched last year. It's called Empowered Belize, Empowered Business Program for Women, and it also has, like, we don't youths up to 30. So it does include male because empowering women doesn't mean that you leave out males. You have to include males. While the program has taken off, the uptake that we required was not there. And so what we did last year was to launch a consultancy for sex aggregated data. And one of the results or the finding is that the way the program is being launched, we have to change the targeting. The targeting or how we're doing it. We just got that report last night, and I was telling my colleague that I wanted to review it, but I didn't have time. But some of the findings are very interesting. But when we looked at that program, one of the areas we identified is that women did not have access to real estate collateral. And for most loans at DFC, once you had a loan over $20,000, you had to offer real estate collateral. So what we did was to shift that to $40,000. So you can get a loan up to $40,000 as long as it's a viable project and it's on cash flow lending, up to $40,000 without any real estate collateral, a promissory note, if you have a contract in place, like, I'm going to use Mary Sharp as an example. She has an export contract for 50,000 worth of peppers, $50,000. So that contract can be assigned to us and no collateral is required. Then that loan program, you can get up to $75,000 with a combination of real estate collateral and a guarantor or something like that. So it's creating that access. But apart from that, we always have to be tweaking. Because, for example, we went to a seminar and we recognized that the program is focusing on women. Women have babies. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're off for 3 months, we may need to give you a moratorium on a payment for 3 months. So whatever you do have to be targeting the population that you're trying to, market to. And that's what we are attempting to do. So, and we are looking to bring down the interest rates because the funding is there. DFC doesn't have any problem with funding. We just got $30 million from IDB. So we have the funds for on lending. Of that 30 million, 30% have to go to women. Women-led businesses. But also the way the data is being disaggregated. Like when we did our gender policy, we found out that when women go to financially, first of all, only 25%, and this was a 2016 analysis, so it's kind of dated. Only 25% of women went to formal financial institutions, well, to banks. 6% went to credit unions. 25% got funds from families and friends. This is for businesses. And the other amount got from other areas. They went to payday loans and things like that. However, when they went in for that loan, Natalie Goff went in for a loan for $5,000. It's not recognized as a business loan. It's recognized as a personal loan. So the way we gather data is important. So for all you know, the women, what Marla said this morning, it's the actual, you have the consumer and the other one may be higher if we do the data gathering differently. So these are things that BFC is looking at to do because we actually do impact financing. And to one, make the product more available, get it out, especially to the rural areas. You talk about getting out to rural areas, and to reporting the data as it is. For example, we recognize that 60% of our student loans are to women. So if we're educating 60%, where are they in the workforce? Where are they as leaders? Where are they going when after these student loan, after they take up these loans? But I can also tell you that 90% of them pay their loans. So the data is there.
So there's a business case.
It's a business case for us. It is a business case, and Marla spoke this morning about going to the government with this information and us working together and not against each other. I think DFC does development banking. The commercial banks have their space. Like for instance, I don't know what the board may decide, but I'm definitely not recommending that we do any e-wallet right now. There's enough out there. What we need to do is collaborate with one of the e-wallet providers and ensure, because one of the problems with women accessing financing apart from the collateral issue is the requirements, the AML requirements. I remember visiting this lady when I was working with Credit Union in one of the very rural villages in down south, and she couldn't get a bank account. Why couldn't she get a bank account? Because she required a utility bill. So she had $15,000. They had the 30-year factory in the village. She had $15,000 in her house. She didn't say where, so I don't know if it was under the mattress. But what I'm saying, she said, I have a well. I get my water from a well. We don't use electricity, so I don't need a utility bill. So these are some of the requirements that we have from the formal financial institutions that are, just blocking people out. Now, we know these are required by AML and KYC standards. Like for instance, my husband and I are building a home, and I just recognized, oh my goodness, this man went and put the utilities in his name. So I told him, no, you have to change it because I won't be able to bank in 2 months, if you don't put my name on those bills, because it is required. So how do we see some of our clients as low risk because they're not doing any international financial transactions, like what you're saying, and so that we can onboard them easily? How can we collaborate more? Like, for example, we could collaborate with either with the e-wallets, because we do need the information to see how they've been spending, especially if they have existing business. So all we need to do is collaborate with one another. We need to stop the intense competition with each other and work with each other. Like, for example, we have MOUs with Beltrade, and I'm glad to hear National Bank has. We have an MOU with Women's Department to see how they can provide the social upliftment and we provide the services. So, going forward, I think we're able to do that.
Excellent.
I would like to just mention one point to the Know Your Customer, right? The KYC that the banks are performing, as indeed we are absolutely noticing this as well. And we are changing this, right? That it's not only the requirement that it needs to be strongly the ID and then utility bill, employment letter, right? We are working very closely with the Central Bank of Belize to recognize what documents can also be provided as an alternative. So then this access is easier to open a bank account. So even right now, it's not only the utility bill. Right now we provide, I think, the range of 15 documents which can be provided as an alternative to the utility bill, right? So, but still, right? Still, even with that, we see a lot of population not being able to provide all of these documents. And that's why we had to cater to this public, and we created the wallet, right? But with the KYC to the customers, to the Belizeans locally, I would like to strongly point out that it's changing significantly because it's in the interest not only of the Belize Bank, but I think in the country to get the population into the financial services because it's helping everybody, right?
Excellent.
Oh,
The question we have now is in the design of products and services, what extent do you consider women and women's financial inclusion, and perhaps how could you look at that going forward in terms of how we can consider that in the product design and also in the marketing?
That's a great question, Chris. We analyze data on the daily basis, right, to see how we can tailor our services to the different segments. Because indeed, like banking services are broad, right, to everybody. However, different segments have the different needs, right? So right now, for example, we are working on the mortgages tailored to the single moms, right? Because we notice on the market that then single moms have very little possibility to own their own house. And this is based on the data we gathered from the mortgages we are providing to the market. What is the need and why certain segment cannot access this type of the facilities? So we are working on the special packages tailored specifically to this segment. So I think we all need to recognize, and I think in this forum we all do, that the power of data is significant in the decision making. And based on it, then we can really see where the need is and how we can tailor our services, right? And this one, which I brought over here, is quite serious. But you know, we are using our data to the different programs when we have the Women's Month or when we have the Mother's Day. All of this we can see how the products and services can meet the specific needs of our customers, right? And then really prepare the programs specifically targeted for them.
Same question.
Sure. It's something that we also consider, and I just want to reiterate what she had mentioned as it relates to the data. I think it's very fundamental, market research. You definitely need to understand if there is a problem in the society. If you're creating a product or a service, fundamentally you need to understand what is the problem. Is the product and the service that you're developing will solve that issue that's happening? So I do reiterate that, you know, market research and analyzing the data, because sometimes I think these corporations, you know, we have the data, but again, understanding, and I think that was something that was mentioned in one of the earlier sessions. Yes, you have the data, but understanding how to manipulate the data. And I think it's very fundamental and important. It will also help to make better decisions. So with our digital wallet, we did do market research to understand the population, how much is women versus male. We also understood the spending power. I think it was mentioned earlier as well that, you know, the woman would be the one that's spending, the consumer versus the business, which we spoke about. So it's understanding these data, and, you know, it would help for you to create that product or that service. For digital wallet, we also consider the businesses where you have women, such as the salons, you know, supporting the women who have their salons and stuff like that, explaining to them how digital wallet can enhance something as simple as cost optimization. With digital wallet, our rates are so affordable than what is in the market at this time. And sometimes people don't use your product and services if they don't understand what it's all about. So there are different techniques in which I believe you can utilize to understand or develop the products and services that you are actually going to launch.
One of the things that we've done recently is hire a loan officer who specializes in small business loans. We weren't initially into microloans. I know that's one of the things that you had mentioned earlier. And that's one of the key things where we noticed that a lot of women are small entrepreneurs. They're small business owners, but they don't have access to credit. So we've hired that person. So we're doing that person is basically supporting us in our MOU with Beltrade. And as well, like I mentioned, we're partnering with the University of Belize, and we're hoping to get Galen on board as well, where they both have entrepreneurial educational programs they mentioned. So we're hoping to use this person as a part of that to be able to bring financing to these people. And one of the challenges that women have as well is they don't have assets in their name, like we had mentioned. So for a woman to go to get a loan and have a collateral, it's in her husband's name, it's in her father's name or something, right? So to offer microloans with little to no collateral, hopefully with no collateral, right? They won't need that. Then it'll be easier for them to have access and empower themselves, because what good is it to have a mobile wallet, a bank account, if you're not able to use it to empower yourself, right? So these microloans that we're hoping to get into and to serve our purpose as a national bank will be to help these small women entrepreneurs.
Excellent. So, closing questions before we reach out to the audience for discussion. So twofold, I'll combine two things. Big picture, what role do you see your organization playing in driving financial inclusion? A few years out the road, 5 years, let's say, or whatever time horizon you want to use. And then what's your level of commitment at the managerial and the board level to driving equitable access to financial services?
Well, our role is twofold. One, to offer the products and the services. And like we said, we're at the starting phase. For us, we're having a special person committed to these microloans and to focus on that specific target market that we believe needs the assistance. But also to educate them, right? And that's why we're partnering again with Beltrade. These are people who can help these small businesses. As we had alluded earlier as well, women need to be a part of a network, have a network where they can rely on and share their experiences. So having that financial literacy campaign along with these institutions will help that. We're fully committed to it. Being here is a part of it. We're always accepting our invitations and we're extending our services.
And thanks for accepting.
You're welcome. Right? We want to be a part of the conversation because we want to know how we can better ourselves, how we can help you to get better as well. And just to add to one of the statistics earlier about the board and the makeup of the men, at the National Bank, we have 1 female out of 6 board members. But at the management level, out of 13, 9 of them are female. So that shows our commitment and the vision to empowering women.
Excellent.
For DigiWallet Limited, it's just, moving forward in this digital space. How can we improve the quality of life for all Belizeans, male, female, children? So that's really our mission. When it comes to, having women in power, at DigiWallet Limited is a very small company, but just looking at the parent company, we do have 40% of the employees that are women. And we do have 50% of the employees that are in a leadership role. And it's very important to have the women around the table to help, get different perspectives when it comes to the different things that we need to discuss. And that would help us to be able to make better decisions, ensuring that we have, equal equity both for the males and the females. So we do definitely foster that culture at BTL and DigiWallet Limited.
We use a lot of statistics when it comes to the female employees, and I will do the same. We are really committed to break the bias, right? At the Belize Bank, 63% of the employees are females. But usually it's, when you look at the bigger organizations, usually they are covering the junior positions. But with us, the 50% of the managers are women as well. And we are extremely proud of that. We invest a lot into our employees. We have a lot of trainings, external learnings, and it's not something that the employee is just growing in years and the tenure is, that's why they are getting to the managerial positions. It's not that. We are really investing in the employees, and we see a lot of ambitious employees on our corridors, and I'm very proud of that, right? But being a female, I'm very proud of seeing a lot of ambitious females with the goal in the organization. I think this is very important. When it comes to the first part of your question, we are very committed into the financial inclusion and the equal access to the financing and the financial services. I would like to bring one more point in terms of the local small entrepreneurs is that the Belize Bank, we noticed that this is a very untapped market, right? They are not belonging to the individual lending. They do not belong to the corporate lending with the big clients, and they are ending up being very unnoticed, right? So what we did recently, we have created a special segment in our portfolio for the small businesses with a separate team who will be working with these businesses. We are working right now on the special products directed uh, just specifically to them, right? So we can have the startup access to lending, right? As for the startups in Belize, it's extremely hard for you to get any access to the financing because of lack of collateral, right? Like I mentioned before. And we want to really change that through the financial education, as then you will need to establish the business plan. So it's not only that you have an idea, but you really have this fully analyzed and you know what you want to do. And then based on this, bank will extend the financing to your business. So this is something that we are focusing on very much right now, and you will see more movement in this area going forward. When it comes again to eCash, this product is full of opportunities and the additional things that we can do with it. And for sure, we will be expanding digital wallet very much in the nearest future. Last year, we did the big initiative with the pop-up shops when we invited the local entrepreneurs to our branch venues to work with them and inviting clients. So we were responsible for the marketing, and the entrepreneurs were invited to come in and sell. And what we saw, majority of the interest was from the female entrepreneurs who are providing the handcrafts, the food catering businesses, and they managed to increase their revenue on the monthly basis by around 25%. I think this is big because through events like that, they are gaining the new clientele that they can retain afterwards. So from the small business perspective, I think we all need to realize that this is the untapped market, and everybody to tailor the services for these businesses because they will grow and they need support. Right? So in this area, we are very much committed to grow our product portfolio for the small businesses and for the digital payment methods, which include eCash, but not only.
Excellent.
I actually think that we are already doing a lot of what is required. As I said, we're one of the few organizations that do have a gender policy. We have a gender champion. Where we can do more is one of our objectives this year is to be more a strategic enabler and to have changes made at the policy level. Marla spoke about a collateral registry this morning, and we're not only looking at for real estate, but for movable assets, because those are the assets that a female entrepreneur can bring to a financial institution, contracts and things like that. Another area that we have to look at, and I'm asking for support, is in terms of regulations. We cannot be taking on this risk at the upfront and then being penalized by the regulator for taking on the risk and have to provide for it on the end, because then it's not a business case. You're becoming like a social organization, and we're financial institutions. So those are two areas that I think we can target. In terms of the products, we are looking, as everybody has been mentioning, to tailor products. For example, we want to, in our education student loan program, to target women in STEM. So you may get a favorable interest rate if you're a female engineer or you're somebody who is undergoing studies in one of the STEM areas. Get rebates when you come back home to work, because a lot of our students go abroad and they don't come back. we're not wasting money because some of them still do contribute, but we need them, we need our engineers, we need our technology experts, our females, and they're good. So how do we give favorable rates to them? The empowered business loan, we're definitely looking to do that. I think the collateral registry will help there. One of the things that we did, I think it was 2018 or 2019, just before the pandemic, we did an expo for all our DFC clients. So in other words, we did the marketing for them. Pandemic came and we couldn't make it an annual event. But that is something that I think we can maybe not do only annually, but with support of chamber and people like Beltrade to do it on a quarterly basis to showcase these entrepreneurs. So there's a lot that can be done. DFC is definitely committed, but we're looking to do it more at the macro level as well as the micro level.
Excellent, excellent points, ladies. At this point, I want to reach out to the audience if there's any questions or comments for any of the panelists.
Hi, good morning. I have a question for Ms. Blake and Ms. Ruda. I know Ms. Blake spoke about it briefly about inviting entrepreneurs coming to Belize Bank. But what exactly are you guys doing to reach entrepreneurs in the informal sector? For example, for eCash and DigiWallet. So for example, let's say I going to work, but I need to stop and buy breakfast. There's a tacos lady on the corner, but I don't have any cash with me, but I have access to a DigiWallet or eCash. But she doesn't use those. So what are you guys doing to reach informal entrepreneurs?
This is a very good question, right? As we started year ago, right? Almost a year ago with our eCash, and we have a team in each district to actually work locally with the vendors and educating them, right? Because the point you are raising, it's I think the problem countrywide, where it's a mindset, right? That the cash is the safest and the the solid way of me making business. So right now, it's not something that we can go to the coconut water vendor and the taco vendor and tell them, here it is, enjoy, because they require more in terms of the education and explaining them how secure it is. And actually for them, these services being more beneficial than cash, because they are exposing themselves with the entire cash they are collecting on the daily basis. But this is more the financial literacy and the education we are driving on the daily basis with our team out districts to have the appointments with the businesses, to find the time, because they are street vendors, they are very busy to drive their business, to find the time with them to explain and to show the benefits of the digital services so they can start to use it. I need to say that we have some successes in this field as well, as this is our main strategy to really target the unbanked population when it comes to our consumers, but even more importantly to the businesses. In Belize City, in Orange Rock, in Punta Gorda, we already have the street stalls who are using eCash, and I would love to see this even more. And I can assure you that we are very much committed to not just to leave it as is and right now work just with the organic adoption of the product, but we are very much committed to work with our clients and the businesses for them to see the benefits and to understand the level of the security that these services are bringing.
Sure. I just wanted to add, in addition to understanding, because I think it's very important with the education campaign for them to understand the benefits of using a digital wallet versus a traditional wallet. There are many different benefits, and she explained a few of them. But in addition to that, I think one of the things that we're looking at is substitute products. Being a telco provider and launching this wallet, we don't, the bank has an advantage in the sense that they have the customer KYC information, they have their bank statements. So providing the necessary requirements, and I believe it was mentioned earlier, the amount of documents that you need to provide, not because the financial institution is requiring this, it's part of the regulator, who are enforcing that you ask for all these documents. That's one of the challenges that we have. So what we're doing is kind of like substitute. So for example, the taco slate or the coconut water, instead of signing them up as a merchant, you sign them up as a personal wallet. You don't need to provide out that trade license and all of those things. And if you're going to the tacos vendor and you're buying tacos, instead of doing a scan to pay, you just do a transfer. And it's as low as 10 cents. The rate is really, really lower than what they would be paying when they use the ATM machines or online services. So we're trying to understand the need and see how we can substitute the different products to cater, because these communities are very, very different. And I guess that what makes Belize unique, right? We have a very diverse culture. One of the things that we're also looking into is the language. How can you connect to your consumer? We do have a part of the population that is very, they speak their own native language, whether it's Mandarin, Garifuna, so we want to also have our services be in these languages that are their preference. So that is something that we're looking at. Likewise, when it comes to digital wallet, this is just the beginning of something that's going to be awesome, because there is so much more on the horizon that we will bring with Digital Wallet Limited. And like I said, I'm just hoping that we will reach the point where we as businesses can collaborate instead of being each other competitors, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what Digital Wallet is all about, building an ecosystem where all the key stakeholders come together. DFC have this awesome plan to lend out whatever loans for these women. You can facilitate, you can expand your outreach. We have seen small businesses where, I'll take for example, Kayo. I like go to Kayo to Pops go get breakfast. I mean, they're very famous. With the whole COVID and all of the different limitations, I think it allows us to understand that, we can come out of this and we can come out better. They can expand their sales by doing curbside pickup. Maybe I don't want to get all dressed up on a Sunday morning to go eat Pops, but you know what? Then deliver now. Instead of having their person on the bicycle, I mean, they could create a delivery service now where they drop that off, scan and pay, thing done. So it's an opportunity for them to expand their outreach. And also, I think when it comes to the small business, partnering with these big corporations like the Belize Bank, BTL, DFC, it also gives them the opportunity to expand their reach when it comes to branding. We've seen a lot of small businesses boom during COVID. And it's, we have talented people in Belize. And I'm hoping that as corporations, we would look at these things and invest in our talent. We don't have to wait for niche for investing in the musicians. We don't have to wait for, it might not have nothing related to telecom services, but we can invest in our local and put them out there in international standards. Just like how Marisha could have all over the world, we can take our different small business all over the world as well.
Hi, just to add to what these ladies have mentioned, one of the things that we've been doing with our wallet as well, we have our teams out in the field looking at these people because we understand they won't come to us, right? It's an educational campaign, we have to go to them. And one of the main things about financial inclusion is trying to get these informal businesses into the formal sector. So as an added value service, what we're helping these small businesses doing, the ones on the street side, is helping them register their businesses. It doesn't take a lot to register. I think it's about $25 or $30 to get an official registration. So we're helping them do that and let them see the value of coming into the formal sector. What all opportunities you will get once you come into that formal sector.
I just want to add one thing. It really has nothing to do with financial, well, it has everything to do with financial inclusion, but I had a discussion yesterday with a representative of the government of Belize. And they have this consultancy, I think it's funded by the IDB, whereby you're gonna get like one card to be your everything. So it will help you register your business in a day. These are some of the innovative measures we are looking at a country, and we all have to come on board. If you don't know about it, go read about Estonia and what they did in terms of 3 or 4 years in by making everything digital. And if I know it may seem far-fetched, but if Belize can take a Freudian leap and do something like that and move from, I don't know, 144th on the ease of doing business scale and bring ourselves up, and not only have a blue bond and have a Miss Earth, but I mean, this country has so much potential. We have so much potential. We are talking about local medicines and things like that. Brazil, well, of course, Brazil has millions of people, but they farm their a whole side pharmaceutical industry in Brazil. So why we can't do it with our local medicine and export it? But and I think women will drive most of these initiatives. So let us get on board, let us work together, and move forward.
Excellent points from all of the ladies. Any additional questions or comments before we close it?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. What are some of the constraints that are faced in Belize in terms of technology, and what can be done to aid in propelling, the initiatives of these projects forward? As we now know that in order for them to be successful, we need both providers and consumers to be financially and technologically literate. So, and this is the first stepping stone of us going to a digital stage. And in other parts of the world, what we're offering and doing now is a centralized form of banking, offering centralized form of banking services, and it's not. In other parts of the world, they're already introducing decentralized forms of banking services in terms of Bitcoin and, that data mining and what all of that have you out there already.
Who wants to take a stab at this one?
There are so many angles how I can answer to this question. No, but you see, I think we all say that Belize needs the financial education and financial literacy needs to be improved significantly. But I think that also a lot of Belizeans are already very much ready for all of the services and the new innovative services that we are bringing, because they know how it also works in the other parts of the world, right? They know how it works in the US and Canada. So they know what's possible. They were just lacking tools in Belize, how they could use it. And I think all of us right now, we are bringing and developing these innovative tools that this part of the market can successfully use. And these are the early adopters of these services, right? to Chris. No, but on the serious note, right? Then we have the other part of the segment that really needs the financial education, right? In these rural areas of the country. And I think for us as a financial institutions, it should be our main objective to educate the market, because it's not only about the profit and not only about lending, but it's really our social corporate responsibility to teach our young population about the financial inclusion and the services, And what we are doing from our perspective, we have a lot of programs for schools to have the digital awareness programs with them. We developed the entire 45 minutes program for the primary schools to teach them about the history of digitalization in the world. It's not only about e-cash and the digital wallets in the country. It's about the history and development of these new tools. And I think the earlier you start, then the awareness will be there, and then this generation will be growing with the different mindset already. And I find this educational part of our daily operations extremely important. We have the sessions with the schools, and you have no idea what questions we are getting from this young generation and people. They are very much hungry of this knowledge. They want to know and they are interested in getting into it, right? And I think it's really our responsibility, not only schools, but it's our responsibility to explain how that works and why it's important. Because you may have different products, different tools, but the concept is important, right? From starting from the school and going through the government, right? Because we are not discussing this right now, but I think the government is a big enabler of everything that we are doing over here. Because if the government states that the bulk payments need to go through the digital system, this is how it's going to go. This is how it's going to work. But if through the policies and the bills we are allowing the companies to still transact in the old way, it's really significantly more difficult for us to get into this market, and we are all, I think, pushing very hard. But I think the government, we all need to agree that the government is a big enabler of everything that we are doing. And the government actually is the one that is responsible for the pace of it, right? I think with the e-governance ministry that we are having right now and all of the projects that we are seeing to happen, I hope and I trust that it will really go significantly faster in these days. And we don't need to wait like in Africa and PESA for the years, 10 years, 15 years for this digital evolution to happen. I believe that in Belize it will happen significantly faster, and we all need to be committed to this for this to happen.
I just want to add to that when it comes to, I think what's important is having the big corporations come together. You know, oftentimes we find ourselves as businesses where we feel like we have to do everything. We do the market research, we have to go find the vendor, we have to do the testing, you know, and at the end of the day, you have different industries in Belize that have their strength. In the hospitality industry, they strive in customer service excellence, making that grand margarita for you, making sure your bed is set nicely, you know. But in the pandemic, we as the technology vendor could have offered solutions for the hospitality industry where we deploy a technology where you as a customer staying at Radisson could check your app to see, all right, how many people is down at the pool? You know, we had social distances that we had to conform to. All right, great. How many people are occupying the space at the restaurant downstairs? All right, so maybe at 8 o'clock I could check back and see if there is, you know, so there are different things. I think when it comes to the banking, I think education is very important as well. I do believe when it comes to social norms, the new generation is definitely moving away from, as a woman, you have to stay home, you have to do this, you have to do that. My grandmother had 13 kids and I have one. I don't want any more, right? I'm so focused on my career and being successful. So I definitely think that as a country, we're moving away from that social norms and what is required of a man versus a woman. And I think the new generation that's coming up, they're definitely technology savvy. using a phone, understanding the apps. They're downloading these apps without you even knowing. I have a son, he's 7 years old. And when I check his phone and like, where all of these apps come from? He's doing his own thing, he's navigating. So I think definitely I'd like to see more involvement from the stakeholders. The government is a big influence, yes. You have the private sector, the public sector. Like, do a plan. If we're talking about Plan Belize, bring all the stakeholders to the table. You have this private sector that is very strong in technology, bringing the solutions. We've launched a fiber network, and we're the only fiber, BTL is the only fiber technology vendor out there. We have launched this where it's cost optimization, it's cheaper than cable. I know for consumers, you guys don't know about copper or fiber, you just want the service to work, right? But I'm just saying these are the things that we have the expertise in-house. Moving into 5G, what does that mean for the consumers? So I think having the businesses especially come together, we make a plan. Anybody could come up with a nice strategic plan, but I think it's also the execution and, doing that post-assessment, where were our shortfalls? So I think, the banks could come together along with the education sector, along with the telecom providers, and we can plan how do we move Belize forward? How do we move our country forward? I mean, Belizeans deserve more, we need to improve the quality of life for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're living on South Side Belize versus North Side Belize. You need to make sure that you're able to have access to your financial services just the same as somebody that's on the North Side.
And just to prove it that digital change will happen eventually. It has to be done in phases, right? It's coming. A while ago, you could remember when Social Security used to pay pension, the long line at the Social Security. They eventually changed it that they're going to be paying to a financial institution, and the elderly people adapted, right? It's the same thing with our mobile phones. We started with the analog, right? The elderly people were kind of hesitant to do it. Now you go, your grandmother is on Facebook, they're video chatting, they're on WhatsApp, exactly. So it takes a change. It will happen. It won't happen overnight. All the parties need to be involved and committed to the process. So we do see a bright future in where technology will take us.
We know it will happen overnight, but still we need, I think, a sense of urgency, so that we're not always lagging behind. We need the enabling environment, of course. So the government has to be there, all on board. And I think Marla mentioned this morning, looking in the mirror. As women, we are talking about financial inclusion of women here. We need to build up each other instead of kind of, bringing down each other. I had a report to me a few months ago where this farmer, female cane farmer, she's not well liked in the organization because she's pushy and considered rude. And when I spoke to her, I'm like, okay, but if a man was doing what she was doing, it would have been okay. Why is she pushy and rude? She is the leader of a group of 10 men. That's all she knows to get her work done. Instead, nobody was looking at what she had excelled at, they were looking at her attitude. And sometimes you just as a leader have to override decisions and say, well, we have to work with this lady. What we will do is help her in her soft skills. Because she could come across, because she spoke to me like that too. She didn't care that I was the general manager. I want my loan and you need to do this and you need to do that. But she had every right. She demanded the service that she think was deserving of her. And that is sometimes we have to step back and listen as leaders. Because that is what we are supposed to do as leaders, listen.
All right, thank you, ladies. Wow, a lot to take away from this discussion. Guys, could you give our panel a round of applause? Really excellent discussion. I think one of the takeaways for me is that the other side of crisis or risk is opportunity. and I keep saying this, like, 10 years from now, they're gonna say, who was responsible or what was responsible for your organization's digital transformation? I would probably say COVID-19.
Yes.
Because 24 months ago, if you went to your boss and said, could I work from home? No. Could I, could, and this is normal. We did it because we had to adapt. And I think we have to continue to use that momentum to drive towards the technological changes that we want to see in our household, in our business, and at the broader national and community level. And I think we could use this technology to improve across the board financial inclusion, and particularly for women and for vulnerable groups. And with that, I want to ask you all to give yourselves a round of applause, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a central bank, so regulator is coming. And on Friday we have a lot of policymakers. I think we have e-governance and Beltrade and some of the other people. So a lot of the structural issues that we were discussing, at least we can have the conversation and hopefully keep it going and get some real traction as we move forward. So thank you again, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Y'all big tend to blow up your phone.
Take care. Good to see you. Everybody good.